Michael, we're live Audiophile Roundtable. Take a look at this here. Our thumbnail today, it's an interesting one. Intervention Records. Carl Perkins, a dance album, AAA 45 RPM. We've got the
cut
one
by Kevin Gray, right?
Kevin Gray, I know.
Wow.
And we have Shane Buettner coming on. I think we got to get him on right now. I'm too excited. I just got to grab him.
A new release from
there he is.
There he is. Yeah.
Friend of the show from the Live Audiophile Roundtable, Shane Buettner, Intervention Records. I am pumped for this. And we were talking beforehand with Carl Perkins. There are songs on there, as a huge Beatles fan that I am. I mean, the songs that are on there, I know all of them because those are songs that I listen to when I listen to the Beatles. Huge inspiration for the Beatles, wasn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, he was rock and roll to those guys. You know, I was really in the same boat. I mean, as we tell the story, you know, first of all, thank you again, because you've had me on so many times when I'm like, well, I had this project canceled, I had that project canceled. You know,
we were trying to get Easter eggs from you, like, oh, I can't say anything. And of course, when the one that you were I almost got you to say, you were this close, you told me, and you're like, thank God I didn't, because it didn't go through. So hopefully that's really a good thing. So
yeah, and you know, and it's funny, I have been working on something else for months, but like in this particular case, I'm not giving too much away, but a member of the band is actually remixing the entire album himself, song by song. And he's taking his time, and the audio is the most important thing. And I said, don't hurry yourself. So, you know, that's been out there. And I mean, we finished album art. We've gotten through, you know, and done as much stuff as we can. But, you know, a couple of years ago, I had talked to the people at Sun Records. I had some really good conversations. And then the thing that never happens happened. And they called me and they said, we've got some iconic artists. We've got some big anniversaries coming up and some things that we really want to commemorate. And we're looking for a partner to do, you know, what we ended up calling hi-fi releases, you know, premium, kind of like they want me to do what I do. And in this case, do it for Carl Perkins. And, you know, it was such an amazing. So first of all, the A&R guy I work with over there, his name is Chase Gregory. He's a great guy. And like I said, the other things that we worked on just didn't, you know, it just wasn't the right time. But the conversations were great. They remembered it and they reached out. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, okay, you had me at Carl Perkins, but like, okay, what's the album? What do you want to do? And then, you know, of course, the important thing is you can have the will to do whatever you want. Do you have tapes? And do the tapes sound great? Can we make the best sounding version of this? So I've got to admit, like you, Steve, we were talking about this.
Yeah.
I knew a lot of Carl Perkins songs from over the years. And I had something of a feel to go, okay, like I know obviously his significance and the fact that, I mean, you know, through the end of his days, anybody who could get him to appear anywhere and play with them, they were just tickled to do it. Because, I mean, he was just royalty, you know, the king of rockabilly, the king of rock and roll in a lot of respects. I mean, I know that was Elvis, but I mean, Carl was right there and he wrote Blue Suede Shoes. You know, so I knew how important this was. And then I have to admit, you know, and for good reason, it turns out, I'd never owned a copy of Dance Album. And it is Dance Album of Carl Perkins, not The Dance Album, which I thought was kind of interesting and hilarious. And I do what I do, which is like, okay, the first step is like, I want to listen. It's like a greatest hits album. Like, all the songs that I really know and feel from Carl Perkins are on there. I did not recall that he covered Only You. So all the songs but two were written by Carl Perkins. That's the other thing, is he was a rock and roll songwriter. And he wrote songs that are now rock and roll standards and have been for decades. The Beatles covered them together as a band. 3 of the Beatles put these songs on their solo records. Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby is on the Johnny Cash Unearthed set. You know, Colin reminded me of this. So by the way,
so let's just go to that. We've got a special guest
Colin,
today,
yeah.
a historian at Sun Records. I want you to introduce who you invited onto the show, Shane. This is incredible.
Yeah, so this is Colin Escott. He was introduced, Michael Fremer, actually, by way of Ken Kessler. Thank you, Michael and Ken, introduced me to Colin, because the first thing that I did was like, okay, I don't know that. Okay, now that I know this album, I've got a feel for it. I'm dying to do it. What's the history of this? What's the reissue history of it? What's the history? Well, I was absolutely startled to find out that these records have, far from not being done to death, they have not been cut to vinyl from tape, we believe, since at least the early 80s. Sun repressed these records a lot in the early 1960s. And there was, one reissue about 10 years ago, and it was not from tape. So that was the first thing. And so they said, listen, if you're going to do this music, you should talk to Colin Escott. He's written a book about Sun Records. That book, in fact, we were just looking at, Good Rockin' Tonight, Sun Records and the Birth of Rock and Roll, that Colin wrote with Martin Hawkins. Colin also wrote a book that I just, before we got on, realized I read probably 20 years ago, a biography of Hank Williams called I Saw the Light, which is a great book. As far as I know, I mean, that is the book about, Hank Williams. So anyway, I contact Colin like practically out of the blue. And the short version is he's been a wealth of information. The thing with this release is that the recording of Blue Suede Shoes is at a 70th anniversary this December. It was cut in December with Sam Phillips and then released on New Year's Day, 1957, as a single. And I'm sorry about that. I'm getting bombarded here.
Well, let's do this.
Window.
Let's bring Colin in, Shane.
He's
waiting patiently backstage.
Yeah, really. Sorry about that. The first things first was to just try to get familiar for the landscape. But like I said, it turns out that Colin has been in the vaults multiple times. Because the first thing I wanted to find out is, okay, like, what do we know about because I'm all about transparent sourcing. Where did the tapes, what is the source we're going to use? What shape is it in? Can we make the best sounding version of this album made? And this is, again, this is an area where Colin's going to have a lot more than I do. But Sun Records was purchased in the late 60s, I think 1969, by Shelby Singleton. And at that time, most of this music was born in the era of singles. And so there were no AB reels like you need to cut lacquers, right? You need the entire repertoire, side A, side B, to cut a record. Well, there weren't any cutting copies, or there wasn't anything that they had. Shelby Singleton started compiling these the 7-inch masters onto reels, seemingly haphazardly. They don't conform to any of the LP sides that like we're familiar with or anything like that. So what they ended up with is tapes all over the place that have late 60s dates on them for stuff that was recorded in 1956, 1957, 1955 perhaps, and not really knowing what is the master, and really trying to do a lot of guesswork. So the folks at Sun thankfully had been working on this for quite a while. And they, they had 24 192 rips that they were gracious enough to share. And they had their picks for what they thought the best sounding version of each track on the album was. And I went through, I listened to it on a high-res system with really good headphones. And in a couple of cases, there was some disagreement. I think there may have been one song on this album where I said, I actually think this other tape, this other version sounds a little better to my ears. And then, there are two ways to go about this. It would be to either physically edit the tapes together, which they were loath to do for obvious reasons. Physically cutting on tapes is not exactly. So what we decided to do at that point was to make brand new master tapes, which is really, probably like what would have been done back in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s, right? When you've recorded a bunch of songs, when you go to sequence them and everything else, most often it gets, the stereo master is going to be, a compiled, a flat transfer, which is what we got, a flat quarter inch transfer. But, the crucial information, among many other things that Colin has shared with me, was he's been there, and I'm like, hey, were there any golden tapes that people saw and know were out there and are gone, or like, is this it? Are these the best tapes that, as far as we know, exist for these things? And I was just flabbergasted to find out that these are the best tapes that exist. Kelly Pribble, Mark Berger, the team at Iron Mountain did the tape transfers. They talked to me and Kevin Gray on the phone. They were super invested in doing amazing tape transfers. Because, I'm that picky. I'm like, well, gee, I don't know. I'd like to talk to these guys. I've had Sterling make me tapes before. I think in one instance I had Battery Studios make me a set of tapes. But, as soon as I talked to Kelly and his team and saw how badly they wanted to deliver pristine tape, new master tapes for Kevin and I to use and make the best possible version of this record. And by the way, I'm teasing this pretty hard, but Kevin and I cut 2 records. There are 2 records in the can right now. And all I could say is that the tapes in both cases absolutely blew our minds. And I don't think that Kevin and I have spent more time looking at each other and just smiling ear to ear as we did the 2 days that we cut these 2 records.
So without further ado, we must bring in Shane.
Absolutely.
Colin.
By the way, if I missed my cue earlier, I'm not used to being an MC. I don't. If we were waiting for me, I actually thought you were going to bring up the video. So sorry about that. I didn't understand.
That's okay. That's okay.
So this is my new friend, Sun Records historian, Colin Escott. And when so the thing that I got when we started going through this project, which by the way, I always overshare with you guys, as you know. The idea for doing this came up in August, and they were talking about getting this out by December. And I said, I'm not telling you no. I'm telling you everything's got to go just right. And I got to tell you, knock on the faux wood here, everything is going just right so far. And I couldn't have moved at this speed with this much certainty without Colin's input about everything from, hey, are these the best tapes? And like I said, so what they sent to me were 24 192 flat transfers from all of these tapes and the tape boxes that go with the tapes. Notes from Colin Escott dating back to the 80s and early 90s are still on the tape box in the Sun Records vault.
So Colin is a Sun Records historian, Shane?
Yeah. So like I said, some of the first questions I had for, and like I said, Michael Fremer and then, Ken Kessler put me in touch. He's been extraordinarily generous with his time and knowledge. Because, one of the things I discovered is the center labels that have been appearing on recent vintage reissues of the Sun catalog, even from Sun, used a version of the Sun center labels with the rooster on it that was, my understanding at this point is that it was used on 78s, not on the 12-inch LPs. And Colin, another thing you might share this, I was talking about the fact that these albums were born in the singles era.
You mean this guy here?
Exactly. That's it. Blue suede shoes.
On the 78, and the backside is Honey Don't. Did Ringo sing that one? Who sang that? Ringo.
Yeah, that was Ringo.
That's my original Sun Records. There you go.
So, Colin, I wanted to welcome you to the Audiophile Roundtable as well, and really appreciate coming on with Shane and Michael and myself. And so I just wanted you to introduce yourself to the folks. Tell us a little bit about sort of your background, how you got involved with this project. We're really curious to know more about that. 'Cause, I mean, like you said, your name are on the tapes, apparently, according to Shane. So that is
shouldn't be,
pretty cool.
they appear to be. Yeah.
We were talking beforehand. You're like, I don't think they're on there. Like Shane's like, no, they're on there. I have the tapes, Colin. So pretty cool. So how did this project come about? So tell us.
You sound like you're from Canada. Are you from Canada?
I'm from Vancouver. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I used to live in Toronto.
Okay.
I started off as a fan, which I guess most of us did. And I grew up in the Beatles era, big Beatles fan, and started digging back into where it all came from, and kept running into Sun Records. And in those days, Sun Records was distributed in England through London Records, British Decca, and the only way you could see it was a little subscript at the bottom used to say recorded by Sun in Memphis. And you notice after a while that so many of your favorite records had that little subscript on them, Jerry Lewis and Johnny Cash and Carl and so on. And then of course I found out that Elvis recorded for Sun, and then a whole lot of old blues guys recorded for Sun, and Roy Orbison recorded for Sun, and it just became an intriguing story. In 1970, me and a friend came to the States and got a Greyhound bus pass and went to Memphis. And it was before Interstate 240 was built, and the bus used to go straight down Union Avenue, and you could see the numbers counting down, and you'd see the old Sun Record Studio, which was abandoned then. But it was. And at that point, Shelby Singleton just bought the Sun catalog, and he was in Nashville. He moved all the tapes there, and Shelby was hot with a record called Harper Valley PTA, which you may remember or may not. And
Jeannie C. Riley.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
And Shelby had all the tapes. He had some guy recompile the old 7-inch reels onto 10-inch reels, and he set a whole bunch, like about 1,300 7-inch reels, sitting in his basement. So, Martin and I started sorting through all these tapes, trying to figure out where the original masters were. First for LP, and then for CD, and we started working on compilations for Philips Records, which is not Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun, but it was part of Polygram Records, now Universal. And then a whole bunch of labels, from Budget to like Pickwick to higher end like Bear Family, and I mean a whole slew of labels. Rhino we talked about earlier, it was really kind of a dream come true, to sit up in the Sun control room, or Shelby's control room, and listen to all these tapes coming back, and I don't know what happened to the old 7-inch boxes, but by the time we got to them, say that they'd mostly been strung onto these 10-inch reels, like spun together onto 10-inch reels, and even then it wasn't entirely clear which ones were masters and which weren't. And this was before the days when you could digitally analyze to figure out what was what. You're just going by ears. So I might have made some notes on tape boxes, but I gotta hope they weren't original tape boxes, the 7-inch ones. So that's the story. And Martin and I wrote a book about what we discovered, and I kind of moved on to other things. And about 20 years ago, I guess, about 20 years ago, I wrote a stage musical called $1 Million Quartet that went to Broadway, went to Vegas, we played 7 or 8 years in Chicago. It went all over. In fact, it's playing in Costa Mesa tonight, as a matter of fact. And that was about the night that Carl Perkins, or it was about a Carl Perkins session, the one that produced Matchbox. And that night, Jerry Lewis was the session pianist, and Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley dropped by. And it was the night that they all got together. And we made a stage musical out of that. And I was adamant that Carl get a full 1/4 of the action, because it was his session for one thing, and he was in many ways one of the true originators. So when we wrote the stage musical, we just wanted to kind of give Carl his due, and hope we did. And I hope that this record, the dance album, which was really like one of the first LPs I ever bought back in 1964 or something, a few years after the Beatles, but not long after. I just wanted to make sure that it was it's just a kind of an honor to be able to have it out again in the most pristine sound quality. Anyway, that's enough from me.
Well, Shane, tell us about the processes, though. Obviously, it's 45 RPM. It's your first mono. I think you were telling me before it's your first mono cut as well. So
yeah.
why 45 RPM? A lot of folks are on the fence. So some want 33, some want 45. They don't want to get up a lot. So why did you choose 45? Just dynamic sound quality? Is that really what it is?
Here's the thing. Carl got in, got out. Nobody got hurt. The songs are fast. A lot of them are, 2.5 minutes. 12 songs over 2 sides. Kevin and I looked at each other, and one of the things, as you guys know, I do full 3-step process. I'm a voracious consumer of vinyl. I've really looked at it, and there isn't anything that I'm aware of that I can do that is really would make an album that I do sound any better than what I'm doing now. With one exception, and that's just kind of interesting. We looked at the times and the fact that it was mono material, and I go, God, Kevin, I said, it's close. I said, I know you like 45s to be like under 14 minutes, but let's give it a shot. So we did what we call the rundown, which is when we nail the EQ and the levels for all the songs. And the only way to tell if you're going to be able to cut it at 45 is to do what Kevin calls a dry run, where the lathe literally, it doesn't go in and cut the groove, but it goes over in time with the record, and you could see where you start and where you finish and figure it out. And the second side of the album was darn near 15 minutes. But due to it being mono, we didn't have to adjust the levels. We didn't have to do anything. And so we've got a maximum fidelity 45 RPM cut where you do not have to flip sides. It's one record and it's $40. And you could not make a better sounding version of this record no matter what process you used. I can definitively say that. And as Michael knows, it's a little bit of inside baseball. I did take a look at something else that's out there recently. And I'm still of the opinion that the best way to get that mainline hit of the analog sound that we all love is vinyl.
So if everyone's listening out there, it's not 4 discs, it's only 1 record. You don't have to go and flip it.
That's right.
3 times.
That's right.
That's an audiophile's dream. Now they don't have to worry about exercise. You can put it down. Well, it's a dance album with Carl Perkins, so I expect you to get up and dance.
You're supposed to be dancing. You don't want to stop the dancing to flip the record size.
No, exactly. So that's really cool that you're able to do that because the songs are so short as well. So obviously with 45 RPM, you're getting more of a frequency. Do you feel? I mean, you're going to say yes, of course. That of course this is the best sound. This is probably the best sounding record that has ever been put out there of this album. Clearly.
I was absolutely, and Kevin was too. We were absolutely startled by how good the tape. Sam Phillips was a hell of a recording engineer. You could hear the room sound. You could hear the drumsticks. There's so much low-level detail, dynamics, and the other thing is, it is called the dance. It is an incredibly infectious and fun record to listen to, and I can just say, records cut of that era, I've heard originals from Sun of that era, and all I could say is we could all guess at the reasons why, but the finished vinyl product really does not hold a candle to what Sam put on those tapes. The tapes are majestic. They're magic. It was one of the most revealing and amazing experiences I've had doing this. I mean, and I'm not remotely kidding.
And that was a question I had for Colin as well. I mean, Sun Records had magic about it, Colin. I mean, you're not going to disagree with that. I'm going to ask you this, and maybe Shane knows this as well, but was it about the studio, the musicians? I mean, obviously the musicians, that's probably a dumb question. Or Sam Phillips himself that gave these recordings or records their unique sort of energy and sound? I mean, what do you guys think?
It came down to Sam. I mean, Sam started off as a radio engineer, and you got to remember that he started his studio in 1950, and the tape only came in 1948, and you know he used Ampex recorders, 350s, and he was a really, really good sound guy. He figured out a big difference between tape echo and reverberation, you know, like chamber echo. You know, he figured out how to, you know, he broke the bank and went for two Ampex 350s and figured out how to bounce the signal from one machine to another to create this slap back sound. So, you know, if you listen to Johnny Cash's early recordings from Columbia after he left Sun, and Carl Perkins recordings from Columbia after he left Sun, and Elvis doing Heartbreak Hotel after he left Sun, you hear this very, you'll hear reverb, you'll hear echo in the sense of an echo chamber. Listen to Sam's, you'll hear very tightly focused tape echo. It's like the distance between, it's like the difference between presence and distance, you know, and Sam figured out how to capture presence on tape at a time, you know, say when tape itself was kind of in its infancy. So yeah, he was a very, very, very skilled engineer, and those records don't sound great by accident. They sound great because he engineered them.
Yeah, and that was really echoed in what we heard. You know, no pun intended. The tapes just sound great. You know, I was absolutely thrilled. It would have been great at 33, but I really believe at 45, this is as close as you can get to having those master tapes in your room. And it's a freaky, you are there in the room kind of experience.
Hey, Colin, do you know what kind of microphones Sam Phillips used at Sun Studios?
I think it's RCA 44, is it? I don't know.
Okay, those are the big rectangular ones, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The lozenge shape, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Colin also was gracious enough to write liner notes for this. It's another first. I've never included liner notes in a release, but you know, I've never done something as weighty in rock history as this record. And Colin was gracious to do that. And a lot of it, Colin, maybe if you could share the impact that Carl, above all others, had on the Beatles.
Yeah, I mean, Carl was kind of like the common ground for all four Beatles. You know, they all loved him. They all had that record, the Dance album, and as Shane mentioned, they covered every song on that album except Carl's cover of Only You. They didn't do that. But between the three of his songs that they recorded for Parlophone, Capitol, and the early songs, the early recordings that they did for the BBC, and then the jam session during Get Back, Let It Be, and then Paul, who later bought Carl's music publishing. Paul did a couple, and I think John did a couple that have surfaced here and there. So between the four of them, individually and as a group, they did 11 of the 12 songs on this record, and you know, it was kind of through the Beatles that, and they didn't just cover his songs. They kind of absorbed his way of making music into their music. So, you know, Carl kind of entered the DNA of popular music through the back door, through the Beatles. And it wasn't the way that he wanted to get in when he first broke through in 1956, but it's really through the Beatles that we you know, that most people have any kind of connection to old Carl today.
You know, I pulled out my American Beatles 65, and there's 2 Carl Perkins songs on this one. They did Honey Don't and Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby.
Yeah, and they also did one other one. What was the other one? Matchbox, of course.
Oh yeah, Matchbox was that on that album? Yeah, that was actually on Something New in the U.S.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
You know, in those early Beatles albums, especially, you know, in mono, have a lot of that fast drive to the music. You know, I mean, their music evolved so much in such a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go back and listen to those, you know, the first couple of records, and I listened to the UK versions, you know, the UK lineups on that mono set that came out, and the drive and the, you know, and I guess that's really it if you want to talk about the other part of the magic. And I'd say this for the early Beatles stuff, and I'd really say this for Dance Album. It feels more like a live performance than a studio record. You feel like you're in the room with a band that is really clicking, having a good time, and it really makes your foot tap. I mean, you can't help it.
Colin, I have a quick question for you. How did it happen that Elvis covered Blue Suede Shoes within a year of Carl Perkins recording it? How did it happen so fast? Any idea why?
Well, Carl, yeah, well, Elvis loved the song, and you know, Elvis left Sun in October of 1955, went to RCA, and then Carl recorded Blue Suede Shoes in November of '55. I mean, Carl had been doing mostly country music on Sun. He had 2 singles out that were really country more than anything else. But when Elvis left, Sam Phillips gave him the green light to go into this rock and roll style, and Elvis really loved Blue Suede Shoes. I mean, he and Carl had toured together down in Mississippi, you know, in late '55. He'd probably heard Carl playing it,
Mm-hmm.
and right away, the first of '56, Carl broke through with Blue Suede Shoes, and Elvis broke through with Heartbreak Hotel on a national level. Before then, they'd only been regional artists, and you know, they kind of leapfrogged each other up the charts. And Elvis just really loved Blue Suede Shoes, and he was putting together his first record, his first LP, and he just pulled favorites, you know, like Blue Suede Shoes was, you know, when they did that first album you're holding up just now, the one with the great cover. You know,
And that was cut one, side one on his album too.
Yeah.
The first thing you heard.
So Carl, I'm sure, was flattered. He was also pissed off because he saw it as competition, and he was especially. I mean, Elvis didn't issue it as a single. He only ever issued it on an album. But he performed the song on one of his early TV shows, like maybe one of the Dorsey Brothers TV shows. And Carl kind of thought that you know, Elvis had stolen his thunder. I mean, in fact, Elvis had something that Carl didn't have, just as Carl had a lot that Elvis didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, Elvis never wrote songs. Elvis couldn't play lead guitar, but you know, I mean, Carl was a complete package, kind of like Chuck Berry. So I think Elvis covering Blue Suede Shoes was really like a mark of respect more than anything else.
I have another question for you, Colin, in terms of Carl Perkins, his guitar style. Like, how do you think it influenced not only rockabilly, but rockabilly, but like rock or rock and roll as a whole in general?
Carl had to sing and play lead guitar at the same time, and not I don't mean he could overdub his vocals. I mean he had to do it live, so that kind of limits what you can do. So his style was simple, but it was very lyrical, and it had country, it had blues, and he just kind of blended it all so unself-consciously, and I think that was what George Harrison in particular picked up on. When the Beatles did their first tour, backing a guy called Johnny Gentle in Scotland in 1960, before they ever went to Germany, George called himself Carl Harrison because he pretty much learned how to play from that album, and you can hear that. You can hear that, on so many Beatles records. You can hear little Carl licks popping up here and there. And I mean, really, Beatles for Sale, the British version, which I grew up with, is on some level a kind of Carl Perkins tribute record.
I was just reading some of the comments here. A lot of the folks didn't know we were live tonight. So we are live, guys. We just haven't put up any of the comments yet. We're going to get to some questions from the viewers a little bit later as well. If you guys have questions right now for Colin or of course, for Shane, go for it. I'll put them on the screen. But no, this is a live recording. This isn't pre-recorded, Glenn. This is live. Normally it's live. So yeah. But yeah, no, that to me for Carl Perkins, I mean, I knew about Carl Perkins because of the Beatles, going back to that's how I was introduced to Carl Perkins. So when I heard that Shane was releasing this record, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I mean, the way he's put it together, we know he's a huge audiophile. And I know, Colin, you mentioned it. Maybe you're not an audiophile per se, but I would like to argue to anyone that, hey, if you love good quality, great sounding records, I mean, you're an audiophile, and it's what Shane has been doing in the industry, putting the best records together with the master tapes, using the best engineers. I can't imagine, Shane, this isn't going to just knock your socks off. Anyone that's going to listen to this record, I mean, I'm excited about it, and I think when someone was asking too, sorry about that, when the release date will be, Shane.
So right now it's December 19th, hell or high water, because basically it gets out there before Christmas or it gets out there after Christmas. And right now we're on track to deliver on or before December 19th. So
pre-order now on the Intervention website, obviously. Let's
That's
do a little.
right.
We got to do a little plug, Shane. I mean, where do we go?
I know.
Intervention Records. So yeah.
Terrible salesman.
So what I wanted to show the folks as well, and I want to share my screen, and maybe you can help me with this. I want to show the tape boxes, right? I think that's really cool to see. You guys put a lot of work into that, so let's start with that if you're cool, and you can tell me you just direct me where you want to go first. I think you wanted to go tape boxes first, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So let's do that. How does that look there? Can you see all that? Hopefully it's
great.
Hopefully it's moving here.
It's loading.
Internet weather.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's a tape box for the newly compiled master by Kelly Pribble and his team at Iron Mountain. I think Mark Berger's name is on that. So he was actually the tape engineer working with Kelly at his direction. And that is me sitting right there at the console at Coherent Audio with Kevin Gray sitting right next to me. So, yeah, and so what you see there under the comments, so you're going to love this, and Colin will be able to add a lot of color to this. So yeah, so what you see there is Carl Perkins. These tapes are minted on 9/4/25, quarter inch, and the whole thing. But so check this out. So scroll up just a little bit, and what you see is the title, and then you see comments. And the comments is the number of the source tape. So DD9 stands for Ding Dong Tape 9. So Colin, can you share with us who Ding Dong is or was?
Yeah, well, Shelby Singleton, who owns Sun, he gave us unlimited access to the vault, and he also gave a French guy. I can't remember his real name, but he was a DJ, a rock and roll DJ in Paris, I think, and he went by the name of Ding Dong, and Shelby and his brother John, who ran Sun Records, they would lock Ding Dong in the studio at night, and he would listen to tapes all through the night, and he had incredibly good ears, really good ears. I mean, he knew what he was listening to, and he edited out what he regarded, and he was usually right, as original master recordings. So, and he spun those together on what were called ding dong reels, 1 through whatever, that he used for compilations that he did for Charlie Records out of London. And those reels, whether he should have done that or not, he probably should have flagged the original reel, but he put together these compilation reels, and say DD9 is the 9th reel that he put together. The others, the SICs, that stands for Sun International Corporation, which was the company that Shelby formed when he bought Sun, and he got an engineer and a historian, a guy called Steve Revere, to take these 7-inch reels in the kind of sometimes in crumbling boxes, and put them onto 10-inch reels, which is what the SIC reels were. So a lot of the original tape boxes, the 7-inch tape boxes, were thrown out. But the original tapes were spun onto these SIC reels. It's just that Blue Suede Shoes, for instance, would probably be on 3 or 4 SIC reels, and it took Ding Dong to figure out which tape was the original master of Blue Suede Shoes. So, and the outtakes. So I think there were 4 tapes of Blue Suede Shoes, and we found the outtake box in Shelby's basement, the original 7-inch reel, and you could see where Sam had edited out. I think it was take 2 to put on this reel that ended up as a Ding Dong Reel 9. But that's how it progressed. And Sam was a great engineer, but he was not. He didn't slate and document recordings the way that, say, RCA would. he would listen to it back. He would listen back to the tape he recorded, and he put a little bit of paper in the tape, and to flag where his preferred take was, and that's just the way he operated, because he didn't need to document the artist or the song, because he knew, and he was a one man show.
So just to clarify, Colin, at that time in the 50s, they would physically splice out the master tape out of the sessions tape, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Then he would send it in for mastering. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, obviously, it was all recorded as a mono.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can argue when did stereo come in with Cook Laboratories or something, and but it was a good few years away. He did everything to quarter inch mono.
I have a question for Shane, and Steve too. Can you zoom out on the box for a minute, Steve?
And by the way, so Blue Suede Shoes, DD9 was the source for that.
Yeah. Can you go to the very top?
There's a note on one of the Sun boxes that the original tape was lost, and it's believed currently that the master of Blue Suede Shoes is actually on DD9.
Okay.
It's by far the best sounding one, and to Colin's point, I think I listened to 3 or 4. Bless you.
I want to find all of Ding Dong's tapes now. You should do like a Ding Dong compilation.
Yeah. So Steve, the reason I asked you to go to the top of the box, some of us that kind of know the ins and outs of the business know about this, but for our viewers that don't know, what is Iron Mountain? Can you go to the very top of the box and have Shane explain that? What is Iron Mountain?
Iron Mountain is a company that basically all the majors, as far as I'm aware of, they are an archiving and a media archival service company. So they basically keep this stuff safe, keep it under lock and key. And whenever you go to pull a tape to use for any of the things that we do, one of two things happens. Like in this case, the guys at Iron Mountain took it to their facilities. They've invested an incredible amount of money in equipment to be able to make ultra high quality tape flat analog transfers, and of course they can do high res digital transfers as well, which the tape boxes these days, an original master tape will have something on it indicating whether or not it's been digitally archived or not. Nothing, and if it hasn't, they'll do that on the spot before they send it out. But one of two things happens. The original master tapes themselves, if it's permitted by the label, will be sent out to the mastering studio for mastering. Or like in this case, it went to another one of Iron Mountain's facilities where they made these tape transfers, these new masters for me. And I should be clear, the new masters, I say they're for me. I've had the privilege of using them. They obviously belong to Sun Record or Primary Wave.
Got it.
How long did the whole process take, Shane? I don't know if you mentioned in the top in terms of getting this. You got a phone call from Sun, which is really cool. You never get, the phone never rings. You're the one that has to obviously do all the work. You got the phone call, and then when did this all happen for you? It must have been pretty quick.
Well, you could see they cut the tapes on in early September, and boy, what date was I there with Kevin? It was very shortly thereafter because we've had that in the can for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that was like Labor Day weekend, September 4th.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, literally.
They like I said, and by the way, I misspoke earlier. To Colin's point, Blue Suede Shoes was recorded in late '55, and then Colin, is it correct? I hope it's correct. Otherwise, I have to change the website. But the single was released on New Year's Day of '56, right? Blue Suede Shoes. Yeah. So they really wanted to acknowledge that iconic song had been recorded by Carl. And if it was possible, they really wanted a high quality product first and foremost. But they did, if it was going to be possible, to get it out into stores in December. And I said, hey, all I could do is my best. And if everything falls into place the right way. And so far, knock on wood, we're on track.
Well, that leads me to this. I know one of the viewers had asked before, or right here, any chance of more Sun Records releases, Shane, Colin? Now you guys have this partnership.
Well, 100%. Like I said, there's another one in the can. I can't let it out of the cat out of the bag just yet. But I did announce as part of this announcement that this is, the first LP in the Sun Records Intervention Hi-Fi series. And these are going to be exactly what this is. These are going to be archive quality reissues, sourced from the original master tape, cut 100% analog. I don't know how many of them, will be able to do a 45 RPM. That'll be a, virtue of, whether they fit or would have to be compromised, in which case we do 33s. But yes, they're wonderful people to work with. They're great partners. It takes both sides to try to, microwave one like this. And the reason, by the way, I'm not trying to be overly coy about the second artist and the second record. They asked me how soon I wanted to announce the second record. And I said, listen, to do this, to do the dance album of Carl Perkins the way that I need to do it, I need to focus all of my attention on this and have production completely locked in. And then I'll start looking at the album art, the other, initial things that I need to put a new announcement out there and to put something up for pre-order. I literally, the first step is having my art director do scans of, getting original album and stuff like that. I've acquired an original. I haven't even gotten to my artist yet because we've been locked in on getting this one as right as we can possibly get it. And it's taken some work, any time that you're working from scans, particularly ones that are pushing 70 years old, that is a chore, so there you go. Now this is great. I love this. So you can see there that file name is submittal version number 9. So we've gone through 9 versions of this. And when we work with a label, they approve all of the artwork. So my artist creates one pretty high-res PDF file that shows the front and back cover, the gatefold interior, if there is one, and the record and the center label. So stop right there where you are. You see those little black and white vertical lines? So our original scan had picked up parts of that had faded and were kind of missing. Just tonight, before we got on live, my art director, Tom Vatican, who's just tremendous, cloned all that out and replaced those lines and cleaned them up. And by the way, go back up to the front cover, if you could, because I want to mention this. The pain in the butt with this one was the baby blue, because the scan that we used, it had faded and it yellowed, and we picked up a little too much yellow. And when you're working from a scan, you got to realize it's not the same as an artist taking brand new elements and having complete control over every discrete element the way he would if he did this new. Each little thing would be its own kind of layer where you could do things independently. The only way you can get independence with this is by doing cutouts and layers. So like that baby blue, for example, it's the bed behind that kind of crosshatch pattern on the right. It's in the music note. It's very difficult to like look at the area around the dancers and that silhouette of Carl, that line drawing of Carl that's up there, what it would be like to just try to draw that baby blue background out of there. It took a lot of hours. We got it right. But here's the other thing. It's kind of like a balloon. You can't squeeze one color without another color popping out a little bit. So it really is a delicate balancing act. You're never going to get exactly everything you want, but I think we really nailed it because this is a really Americana looking cover. I had some questions looking at the other versions that are out there. I'm like, I really feel like the red, white, and blue would be very red, white, and blue, like the American flag. But it took a lot of work to get the other elements right. And there's another fun fact here. All Mama's Children is a song that's listed on the front cover. It was listed on the front cover of the original LP, and it is not on the album.
There's the track list right there. And yeah,
that's right. It's not. And I told the folks at Sun, and I'm so happy that they agreed with me. I believe to do an authentic dance album of Carl Perkins, like the original that came out in 1957. But if anything, the printing quality is boutique. We had the opportunity to actually do it better than it would have been then. We're doing an old style stout and tip on a brown in blank, which means the cardboard that the high-res paper gets wrapped around is brown like it would have been in the 50s. And they were in 100% agreement with me that and by the way, they had never noticed the Phantom song. In fact, Colin, do you know how it came about that All Mama's Children, which was recorded, and there are some versions of this that came out later that included it, but it was not on the original Sun pressing?
I have no idea. If you see, it's not on the track listing on the back. It's on the front.
Yeah.
I guess he submitted the artwork for the front before the back, and then those days they used to try to hold the track count to 12 because of what it cost in mechanicals. The mechanical royalties. So I guess Sam needed to leave a song off. I don't know why he left that one off, because it was a song that he published, whereas Only You was a song that he didn't publish. But
Only You was the Platters, by the way, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Wrong Yo-Yo is the other song. Am I correct, Colin, that Wrong Yo-Yo is the other one that Carl did?
Yes, that's
the right string.
That's the song that he covered. Yeah, it was originally by a guy called Speckled Red, a piano player called Speckled Red.
And by the way, I don't know if it's just me, like, because when I do an album like this, I kind of instantly become like the artist's like biggest like fanboy. I could not believe. I think he's vastly underappreciated as a vocalist. because I think his rendition of Only You is beautiful. And I think his singing voice really showcased on that tune in a way that it isn't on any other cut on the album.
Shane, Glenn had a question. Other than the website, on the cover or hype sticker, does it mention mono? I realized back then mono wasn't on covers.
You know, and that's a very good one. So the hype sticker, because of the fact that that'll usually get done a week or so before we go on press. Gotta Groove actually does the stickers. That's a really good question as to whether or not I should make that clear. I mean, I'm aware enough that an album of that era, if it doesn't say stereo, that it isn't. But I'd honestly be open to feedback. If people think I should mention that and be more upfront with it, I certainly can be.
I would like to see that on the hype sticker, at least, that it's mono.
Well, you know, and it's very funny because I didn't include it. You know, you're the second person who has mentioned to me in the last week or so as this news has come out that I will say mono is on people's minds in a way that it has. I will update the website and I will include that on the hype sticker. That's really good advice. I really appreciate that.
Hey, Shane, quick question. So I know a lot of audiophiles listen to this show. Does someone need to have a mono cartridge to play this Carl Perkins?
Absolutely not. No,
you don't. Okay.
Listen, mono on mono. If you do have a mono cartridge and play a mono record, Michael, as you and I have experienced very directly together, I do think that that's a superior experience. But not only can you play it with a stereo pickup cartridge, it won't cause any harm to the record or the cartridge. I have been asked that. And by the way, Steve was just showing the very latest version of the center labels. And this is another thing that Colin was able to, you know, so this is fun. So Kevin enjoyed these sessions so much. He's never done this before. A rockabilly guitarist named Deke Dickerson lives in his neighborhood. He invited Deke over to listen to the tapes. And there's a few videos that'll come out later of Kevin and I talking and kind of doing a little interview together. Deke shot those for us because he was the only person who was there. I didn't have time to make any other arrangements. Deke is the one that pointed out to me that the center label with the rooster that Michael showed earlier was only used on 78s, not LPs. And then Colin told me, you know, my graphic artist, when we started working on these colors, I said, so first of all, we had to rebuild these. And thankfully Sun had these elements because like the sun rays, for example, we tried to do it from a scan. Again, it had faded too much. And there were some parts that were literally washed away. So we rebuilt it from scratch. I think they look beautiful. But my artist had found some labels online for color reference. And Colin pointed out that in the early 60s, Sun reissued these things, and the center labels went to a much more reddish brown on the brown elements, and that the yellow got a little more hyper and was a brighter yellow. So I went back and I pulled a few different exemplars for Tom to look at. And just tonight before we went on air, he sent out this version of the files. And what had changed in that version is we toned down, we got a browner brown. And really, I think the bulk of it you're seeing is that we just toned the yellow down quite a bit. So it's not quite as day-glow yellow, which again gives the brown kind of a more classic appearance.
I do have a Sun from the early 60s here. I can show my label so you guys see. It looks very similar. Take a look at that. It's almost the same.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
It's almost the same, isn't it? It's got a deep groove.
Yes. That looks cool.
I think you matched it.
Well, you know, and by the way, this is the first set of center labels I've ever done that don't have any mention or any image of the Intervention Records logo. I couldn't put anything on this beautiful center label. And once again, the folks at Sun are great because, you know, the publishing now is with a different company. So when you look at the little credits that come after each song, Sun is allowing me to keep this exactly as the originals are, as long as in the liner notes, after, you know, Colin's introduction to the record, its importance, how much Carl influenced the Beatles, and kind of the footprint that this thing has in history. We'll include a full set of credits that include the current publishing rights. But I'm just thrilled that we were able to, you know, with my partners at Sun, that they're allowing us to really recreate this in a super authentic way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that, guys, we're at the top of the hour. I wanted to thank everyone. It was an incredible journey here, learning more about Carl Perkins. And again, where do we find this, Shane? I'm going to go to the website so everyone can order it. How's that sound? Let's do that.
You know, and listen, I do want to make a pitch for this that's a little special. I'm really, really proud of the fact that this is something that has not been cut from analog tape in decades. It's not one of the 5 or 10 artists that keep getting reissued all the time. It's not $90. It's not $100. It's not $150. And no offense, I buy a lot of those records and I don't feel like I get ripped off, but I also know that I'm very fortunate to be able to do so. I'm really proud of the fact that I can honestly tell you, you are never going to hear a better sounding version of this record. You're never going to get somebody to put as much into the artwork and every aspect of the experience as I have with Colin's help and the help of a lot of people. And it's $40. If you want more adventurous record labels out there to do more cool projects, you have to support things like this when they come along. Take some of the records that you were, you know, going to buy your 4th or 5th copy of and throw $40 at this one, because it, for one thing, it is a truly sensational record that you'll be playing for decades and enjoying the hell out of. But two, you know, this is going to be a series. I want it to be really, really successful. Mm-hmm. And, you know, let's show the folks at Sun that they made a great choice in choosing Intervention Records.
We want more records from Sun. I won't name some of the artists, Colin, and Shane, but I'm sure you could imagine.
But one more time, Steve, for $40, you get Kevin Gray all analog cut. You get it plated at RTI. You get it pressed at Gotta Groove, and you get a Stoughton tip-on jacket on top of that.
That's right.
At 45 RPM mono.
45 RPM, full mono. And thank you for reminding me about the mono.
Well, guys, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Order it. Coming out December. I can't wait, Shane. Come back on anytime. Colin, come back on anytime. It's been a fabulous hour.
Colin, I apologize sincerely. I didn't quite understand the way I was supposed to make the intro and handoff there. If you ever grace us with your presence again, I promise I'll do a better job.
There's a reason. Great time. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Nice to meet you, Colin.
It was amazing, guys. Thank you so much, Colin. It was great. Learned a lot. Interventionrecords.com. Shane, thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.